Hello friends, how are you all? I hope you're doing great and taking care of yourself. From last few weeks, I've been preparing myself for the AWS AI Practitioner Certification exam, due to which I was unable to upload any of the videos for our Docker Fundamentals for Beginners series on my YouTube channel. But today I thought it's a good time to upload a video and talk about an important concept in the Docker world, which is none other than Docker file. So, without much further delay, let's get into the depth and understand what is Docker file and how you can use Docker file in your day to day operations. So, let's get started. So friends, if you're not familiar with what is Dockerfile, don't worry, I'm going to walk through each and every prospect of the Docker file. So what is Dockerfile? Let's consider a simple shell script which has a certain commands to execute, and when it executes, it gives you a output. So Dockerfile is nothing but the list of instruction which is used to build your image, and once the image is built, you can run that image on a container as an application. So that's a very simple definition of a Docker file. So in this video, we will be first going through the theoretical concept of Docker file, the syntax of the Docker file, and then we will go into a hands-on session. So let's learn what is a Docker file. A Docker file is basically instructions for building a Docker image. Consider it has a recipe which has what ingredients should be included and what are the steps to make that recipe. So in short, the Docker file lists what base system to start. It can be your Ubuntu, it can be Node.js application, it can be Alpine, etc. What files to copy? Say if you have an application built with a Python script or a shell script, then what files you need to copy in order to build that image, what commands to run, what to do when the container starts. Say for an example, I want when the container starts, it should execute the hello world. And don't worry, we are going to see all this in our demo session. Note, the Docker files needs to be created where your application resides. That's an optional, but it is always recommended to create a Docker file wherever your application code is residing. Now, to create a Docker file, you need to understand the syntax. So here is the syntax of the Docker file. It says from the what base image it wants to use, the worker directory where you want your working directory to happen when the container gets start. You need a label. You can also run certain commands to update that. Say for an example, I want to use the bash script, or I want to basically update the Python library for which is going to be my base image. Then I can write run up apt dash get update, and then followed by installation, and then I copy my ap.py, which in this case is an application, to the working directory which is app. And then once the container starts, I want my Python script to be executed. Don't worry, this seems to be very not clear now, but don't worry, when we get into a hands-on session, it will make you understand what I'm talking about. But these are the few of the syntaxes which you need to remember: from, working directory, copy, cmd, run, etc. I will also tell you the difference between run and the cmd. Now, how to build an image from a Docker file and verify the image? It's a simple command: docker build -t means tagging the image and the path where your Docker file is. As I mentioned, it's always recommended to have the Docker file where your code resides. But say if you have created a Docker file in some other path, then you need to give that path of the Docker file. And finally, once you execute the build command, which will build your image, which is nothing but the instructions which you have specified in the Docker file, you can verify that using Docker images command. And once the image is built, you can run that application as a container, right, which can be run docker run and the name of the image. Don't worry, all these interesting things we will be seeing in our demo session. I hope now you got an understanding from the theoretical perspective as what is Docker file, what is the syntax of the Docker file, and how you can build or create an image from the Docker file. So I'm too excited to show you the demo of the Docker file. So friends, before we get into the demo, I wanted to show you the Docker file document, which you can get it by typing the Docker file on the Chrome browser. So what is Docker file? Here as it says, the Docker can build the images automatically by reading the instructions from the Docker file. The Docker file is a text document that contains all the commands a user would call on the command line to assemble an image. Remember, I told you at the beginning, the Docker file is nothing but your shell script, where whatever the commands like ls, cp command, find command, top command, or cat command, whatever you're executing, you can put that in a simple shell script. And when you execute, it will give you an output of those commands. So consider Docker file has nothing but a simple shell script or a shell script file. What are the commands or the syntaxes in the Docker file is add. You have argument arg, you have a command, you have a copy, you have an entry point, you have an env variable, you have expose, you have form. The form is create a new build stage from the base image, which can be your Ubuntu, which can be Python, which can be Alpine, anything, whatever you want. And then there is something called as a label, add a metadata to the image. You have a maintainer, specify the author of the image. Say it's nothing like, remember, in our shell script we write, okay, the author this, what is the description of this shell script, when was it created, if it has any version, then you write that, and all these we put in the comment. So in this is nothing but, you can, maintainer is nothing but where you can specify all this, okay, I am the author of this image. Okay, and then you have a run command, execute the build commands. Then you have a shell command, you have a user. So you want to execute certain image by setting a user and the group ID, you can go ahead and do that. And then we have a work directory, changing the working directory. So that's what are the certain commands or the instructions you should know when you are writing a Docker file. So let's quickly jump into our Visual Studio, where you can see I have installed the Docker extension version. If you are not sure how to install, you can directly search here. You can go and search in the extension and extensions, and you can basically install the Docker file extension. Now what I've done here is, okay, so I've created a basically a folder called has the Docker demo, and in that I have created a file called as a Docker file. So once you have installed the Docker extension, what your Docker file extension, it will help you to basically type the commands as and when. You don't need to remember as you type. So say for an example, I type here form, so it tells me the base image, and now I want to use an Alpine, which is a very small image of 5 MB. So I will use Alpine, and I need the latest image to be downloaded. I can go to the Docker Hub and I can start downloading any of the version of the Alpine, but I want to use the latest version. So you see, this is what I have used. Now, after this, I want to execute the command call has echo. I will use command. Okay, you see it started popular, and I want to use echo, and then I want to say here, hello, hello, this is my first Docker file. Okay, and then what we are going to do here is we are going to just save this. Now I will open my Docker desktop. So for that I will go to the icon Docker, and let me just open my desktop. So friends, as you can see, my Docker engine is paused. I'm going to just resume that engine. So I'm just clicking on resume, and right now if you see, I have no images in my this, and I have no container running on my desktop. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the terminal by clicking here. Okay, and I'm going to clear this screen. Let me clear the screen for you. Okay, and I am in the folder. As I mentioned, I created a folder called as Docker. In that I have a Docker file which we just modified as 7:53 p.m. and then I have some script.sh. Let's not worry about that. Let's build the image using a Docker file. So what I'm going to do here is clean up here. Okay, let me bring this. I'm going to type this as docker build -t. Let me give my first or let's give my Docker file demo. And since I am in the same directory where my Docker file is there, I'm just going to put as dot, which is the current directory, and you see it will start now building that. So it just, so you see it has started building the latest Docker Alpine image, and you can see there are certain layers. It is caching up and it is unpacking that file demo, and you see now, if you see here, if I go to images, okay, you will see our first image is built here, which is named as a Docker file demo. And now there are two things. I can run this image from here, or I can use the docker run container docker run to start the container. Let's just do it from here, and it goes here. And if you go here, it gives you an option what name of the container you want. Say I want to say my Docker, my first container. Okay, and if you have any volumes, you can do this. If you have any ports where you want your container to be listened, you can do that. If I have an environmental variable, I can use that. What is the value of that? We can do that. Now it's just a plain simple thing, and I'm just going to run this. And you see in the log it has printed. So let's first go to our containers. Okay, this is my first container. You see here it is the first container. Okay, and then let me click on and see. If you see, this container is built from the image what we created, which is my Docker file demo, right, which we saw here, right? and it has basically created a container where my application is running. And if I go to the container, click on the container and go to the logs, it has printed for me, hello, this is my first Docker file. So that's how you can basically use the Docker file to create a container or an application running on the container. So I hope you got an understanding of how to write your first small Docker file. Now will be talking about the environmental variables. I will also show you the run and CMD. I have already showed, but what is difference between the run and CMD? And then we will also use the shell command. We will also use copy command, the work directory command. Don't worry. So let's stay tuned, and I will be in moment showing you that. So friends, until now we have seen how to execute or print a simple echo command using CMD, but now we are going to go one level up, where we will be using the environmental variable. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use an env. The moment I type that, it says me the key and value. So I'm going to type here demo equals to, and I'm going to write this is my first env use in Docker file. And now I'm going to write CMD. I want this to be executed using sh comma minus c is the command line, double quotes. Okay, and then I'm going to type here echo dollar demo, and now I'm going to basically save this. Okay, let's quickly jump to our desktop and see what's going on there. I am at my desktop, Docker desktop, and I'm going to basically create an image. Docker build minus d my first env. I'm already in the Docker folder where it has a Docker file, so that's why I've put dot, which is the current directory. And now if you see, it has started exporting the image, exporting the errors, and the image was created successfully. Now let's use Docker images, execute Docker images to get what all images we have. And I'm going to basically use the image ID to basically create my container. So docker run and the name of the image ID, and the moment I type that, it should create a container and it should print me the output of my demo variable, which is this is my first env use in Docker file. I hope you got an understanding of how to use the environmental variable. Let's quickly jump into some more commands and understand how to execute those as well in the Docker file. So friends, I am back to my Visual Studio where I have a Docker file. Now, as you can see, I've already created a script.sh in which I have used echo command welcome to the Docker file demo session using shell. Okay, and I'm going to basically remove all this. Okay, and here I'm going to create something called going to make a use of work directory, which is app. Okay, so when the container starts or gets created, it will create a working directory called as an app. And now I want my script to copy in that working directory. So I'm going to basically put .sh and app. Okay, once the script is copied, I want to now execute that script. For executing of the script, I need to give the permission, and I'm going to use the run command chmod plus x, and I'm going to give slash app because our script has been copied into the app folder, right? And that's where I give the permission. Now I can basically use the shell command. Okay, if I want to use the shell command, I will use shell right here bin sh comma minus c, okay, and then I'm going to use run command to execute my script. I Instead of all these I can use the cmd command also, and I can directly write there app script.sh. Since I want to show you how can you use the run command, that's where I am basically using this. Okay, now let's quickly save this, right? Because this is important. What we have done until now, we have created a working directory app, we have copied our script into the app folder, we have given the permission, we are making use of a shell command, then we are executing our shell. So now let's quickly jump to our Docker desktop, and I am on my Docker desktop where I'm going to clear the screen. Docker build minus t my first shell and dot. Let's build the image. So now you see it has started building the image. We should also see that it is copying the file. See, it created a working directory. It has copied the script.sh under app. It has also given the permission, and now it is running that app.sh. Now let's this get complete, and the image is built. Now let's use docker images, and if you see, the image was built successfully without any error, and it has name first shell, and this is the id. Now let's run our docker. So I'm going to use docker run minus I, which is an interactive. T means terminal, and the name of the image ID, or sorry, name of the image or the image ID. The moment I enter this, it should execute the shell which I have. Okay, so now we are here in interactive. So if I have not written it, okay, and I would directly run use docker run, it would have executed the script, right? But now since I've used it is an interactive. Now if you see, we are directly in the app directory, right? Because remember, we have mentioned working directory minus working directory has app in our docker file. So that's why we are in the app directory as soon as I type docker run it and the image. Okay, now let's execute ls, and if you see, our script is being copied in that directory. What is the user of that directory, what is the group, what the permission it has? Remember, I gave the permission x by using run this, and now I have that in my this. Now if I want to run, I can go ahead and run the script, and it will give me an output, welcome to docker demo session. If I go to the containers here and I click on this, okay, which says container id, and I've clicked here. Okay, see, we have done all these things, and if I go to files, okay, you will see an app folder here, and it has that script. You can you can run, you can open the file in the file editor, and it will open it, and it will do this. Now let's come out of this. As soon as I come out of this, the docker ps, if I type, there is no container. Now let's use docker run, sorry, let's clear this, use docker run. Before that, let me get the images. Okay, docker run. Okay, and let's use this now. What do you see here? Nothing. Okay, but if I go here, why the output is not there. Okay, if go I go to the history. Okay, let me again build the image and show you what has happened. Build -t my first shell 1. It has not printed anything in the logs. Why do you think it has not printed anything in the logs? Because the CMD will execute once the container is created, but the run command will execute at the time of build. Now let me show you this. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm again going to go to my Visual Studio. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type CMD. Okay, and I'm going to execute the same thing here. Okay, by copying here, save this. Okay, and now let's build our image now. Okay, quickly let me, okay, now let me clear this screen. Okay, let me exit. I'm out of, the moment I type exit, it should be out of the, I should be out of the container, or let me stop the container here. It's okay, I'm out of the container. Okay, let me clear the screen and let's now build the image. The build, okay, my first shell 2. I'm at the docker. Oh, sorry, I missed the tag -t. Okay, let's execute this. It's building it. Unpacking. Okay, so now we have built all this. Okay, let me quickly go back to containers. Okay, I am here, the container terminal. If you see, I'm going to now execute docker run. Okay, before that, let me show you the images. Okay, I have shell 2 as my latest image, docker run. And you see, now I see the output. Welcome to the docker file demo. If I go to my container also, okay, click here on this container, you will see in the logs it has printed. It has also copied the since the container is already stopped, you would not be able to see. But if you want the running logs of the container to be seen, you need to be into the interactive mode. But if you see, it has printed me welcome to the docker file demo session. Why it printed this is because we are using here cmd, which is the command. Okay, once the container is created, I want you to execute that command. But the difference between the run and the command is when you build a when you run a container from the build image, then you basically execute those steps using run at the time of building. But when you are using cmd, of once the container is created, it will execute that command. So that's the difference between the run and cmd. So let's quickly go to the docker desktop docs, and if you see here what is the difference between the run and this, you will see here. Go see, cmd specifies the default commands. Run executes the build command. So that is the difference between the run and the cmd. Cmd will execute the default command what you have specified, but if you want certain commands to be executed at the time of build, you use the run command. Say for an example, I wanted the permission to be given at the time of building, that's why I use the run command. If I wanted certain things to be executed after the container is created, I will use the cmd. So by now what we have understood is working directory, copy, run, cmd, shell. I hope you got an understanding. We also touch base the env variable. Now what is difference between the copy command and the add command? The copy commands copies the directories and the files from your local to the working directory of the container. But the add command helps you to copy the directories and the files from the SharePoint, from an S3 bucket, or the file which is on the network. So that is difference between the add and the copy command. I hope this session was helpful and have you got a basic idea of how to write a simple docker file, how to copy the file from your local directory, how to when to use the run, when to use cmd, how to use the shell command. In the next session, we will be touching base on the docker compose. We will be also talking about the docker volume, etc. Until then, if you think this video has really added a value to learn something new, do not forget to hit the subscribe button and like button, and hit the notify button, hit the bell icon to get notified whenever I upload such video related to the docker. Until then, take care. Bye bye.